pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would ask all of Omaha to continue praying for those that have come together to eradicate a problem that we not only see here in Omaha but across the country, and that's with gun violence. Pray for those families that have been affected by this, and also pray for those that come together in various neighborhoods, governmental entities, business, and even individuals that want to bring this to an end. And we pray for a good meeting. Amen.
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 City Clerk certifies publication in the Daily Record on June 6th. Notice for per council regular City Council meeting June 10th, 2014. A current copy of Meetings Act posted in white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Omaha City Council. This meeting is conducted in public and by law may only address the topics listed on the published agenda. The council will hear testimony but will not engage in debate of issues with the public at this meeting.
Okay, that's all right.
During testimony, it's not appropriate to applaud or convey disapproval. These actions only detract from the formal decorum of the meeting. At this time, please turn off or mute any electronic devices. And we have one item before we start the formal agenda here, which is a reading of a proclamation by Council Members Thompson and Gray. And I would invite Dr. Brown to come down to the podium if you would, please. So we can embarrass you appropriately. Councilman Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, Dr. Brown, I would like to just personally thank you. We were at the event where you were honored and said some words that really need to be repeated again. It is the work that you have done in relationship to the building and the ongoing march of the Charles Drew Health Center has been magnificent, and you have turned it over to great hands. You have done an outstanding job in working with them. You have led us to the next level of where we need to go in healthcare, and it is very much appreciated by me and others in the district as well as across this city, and I think people even in the state are affected by what has been done on behalf of you in relationship to the Charles Drew Health Center. So I wanted to thank you. And we have a proclamation that Dr. Thompson and I are going to jointly read, and then we're going to present you with the formal presentation for you to take home and enjoy the rest of this Dr. Brown Day. Dr. Thompson.
Whereas in 2001, Dr. Richard Brown was selected by the Charles Drew Health Center Board to serve as CEO for the Health Center, and
whereas over the last 12 years, Dr. Brown has worked tirelessly to motivate growth in healthcare by increasing access to medical, dental, and behavioral health services for the North Omaha community, and
whereas he was directly responsible for receiving over $40 million in federal, state, and local grants, donations, and contributions, and
whereas he grew the Charles Drew Health Center from 60 employees and an annual operating budget of $3 million to now an operation of over 120 employees with an annual budget of nearly $10 million, and
whereas Dr. Brown led a campaign to double the size of the existing health center, which now includes 23 medical exam rooms, 5 dental suites, and a pharmacy. In addition, the health center has expanded their outreach efforts from 4 different sites to over 13 health satellite offices, and
whereas during his tenure, Dr. Richard Brown has received numerous awards, to include the Swanson Award, the Urban League Leadership Award, 100 Black Men of Omaha Award, Kappa Leadership Award, and Benedict's Community Service Award, and the National Health Executive Award, and
whereas most importantly, Dr. Brown, who has worked tirelessly to improve the health care services of the North Omaha community, serving 33,000 patients just in 2013 alone, he will be greatly missed upon his retirement in May of 2014, and
in recognition of his hard work, dedication, and service to our community, Now, therefore, we, the City Council of the City of Omaha, do hereby declare Tuesday, June 10th, 2014 as Dr. Richard Brown Day, in witness whereof we have set our hands and caused the official seal of the City of Omaha to be affixed on this 10th day of June, 2014. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be recognized like this, and it makes me feel real good for the work that I have done. It certainly has been work that I just do and have enjoyed. But I want you to know that the hard work that's done at Charles Drew Health Center is done by the medical provider, the board of directors, and the support staff, as well as the volunteers. And they're the ones that deserve the true recognition for the growth and the support that Charles Drew has had over the time that I've been present. And going forward, as Ben Gray mentioned, I've left the center in good financial situation and support with the leadership there. And as community health centers go, they will always need support and help from persons like you. And I do appreciate the support that the City Council has given me and Charles Drew over the years. And again, thank you very much. There's some volunteers here who I want to recognize, because they're the people that work every day and see patients and help staff with work that we don't have money to pay them for, and they should be recognized as well. Please recognize the volunteers that are here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Well done, and I would just add a personal note, too, that I've appreciated getting to know you over the years, Dr. Brown, and thank you for all your work. And even after he had officially retired, I was at an all-day conference with you with the Empowerment Network. So I know you intend to stay involved, and I appreciate that you'll do that and look forward to our ongoing work together. Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
The zoning ordinance on final reading and planning board attachments. We'll take items 5 through 9. It's one case. 5 is ordinance to rezone property located at 888 South Saddle Creek Road from General Commercial District and General Industrial District to Community Commercial District. 6 is to amend the boundaries of the Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District to incorporate into that district property located at 888 South Saddle Creek Road. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. 7 is resolution and preliminary plat entitled Dillon's Saddle Creek is hereby approved. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. 8 is the replat transmitted herewith entitled Dillon's Saddle Creek is hereby approved. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. And 9 is the subdivision agreement is hereby approved.
Public hearings on items number 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are today. Proponents, please.
Mr. President, members of the council, Mark Johnson, 11440 West Center Road, appearing today on behalf of the applicant Dillon Companies, Inc. With me today is Keith Harnack, the applicant's construction manager, and we are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearings closed.
Oh, there's somebody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
New to this, so
Yeah, please.
I'm a resident.
Come on down.
Okay.
Mike.
Just take your time and name and address to start with.
My name is Julie Tyndall, 831 South 49th Street. I'm assuming that I'm part of this rezoning because I live within the area, and this is, like I said, very new to me, so I'm not really sure how to go about this. But a part of this bill, we were put a part of it as to vacate an abandoned alleyway and to have your company take over this. I didn't know if somebody could speak a little bit more on it, but it was just said by everybody in our neighborhood that we wish not to vacate this alleyway to your company or to us without us knowing. Have it signed by 3 out of 5 of us. Sorry, I'm just very unclear about what this has to do with our neighborhood and why we were incorporated in this bill, and why there was one part that just says that a steep, undeveloped alleyway will be vacated to private ownership. And I don't agree with this. It's been very difficult trying to work with Dillons themselves to take care of this problem, and the city has come through in many ways to help out the neighborhood, but Dillons has been just absent in this, and I'm not really sure where we stand in this, but we do not wish to be a part of or have to work with their company, because they're not there for us whatsoever, and they haven't been. And over the past 4 years, it's just been a very difficult process. And like I said, we don't want to be a part of their business, and we wish that they could fix a lot of the codes that we have problems with in our neighborhood. And that's about it.
Okay.
Not really sure where I go from there.
Okay,
Like
thank you. I think we can have some questions about some of those issues in the alleyway for you too.
Okay.
Are there any other opponents who want to speak at this time? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. I'll have Councilman Jerem recognized.
Yes, would the proponents come up? Mr. Johnson, would you want to address some of your concerns on what the alley vacation is, where it is, what's going on?
Sure. When we met with the Planning Department and Public Works back in January, prior to making our submittal, the city had asked us if we wanted to vacate this, and I can put up a aerial here to show you what I believe is the portion of the easement area she's speaking to. There we go.
Could you identify what's around?
Sure. Okay. This is the area where the proposed fuel center will be constructed, and I can give you specifics on that, but at a high level, it's 5 kiosks with 2 dispenser on each side. There's not a convenience store like you would think of. It's a 176 square foot kiosk here where there'll be only an employee access. You can go in there and buy or approach the window and buy a soda or water, candy bar, those types of things, but there's no walk-in access, so to speak. It's just solely a fuel center. Here is the access point that is shown on the plat that these houses here currently use to access their back lots. The alleyway that I believe, and I apologize, I don't recall her name, but the woman was speaking to is this piece here, which is actually the city owns that easement area, and again, they had asked in that meeting if we wanted the city to vacate that alleyway as part of this platting process. We did not want to do that at that time because we thought it complicated things, and we weren't sure if we wanted to deal with those maintenance issues right now. Part of the recommendation is that we continue to work. The planning department's recommendation was that we continue to work with the city and the neighbors to the extent the other parties wish to vacate that easement area, which it doesn't sound like they do. And Dillons would be, more than happy and willing to discuss any issues that the neighbors may have. I'm not aware that any issues have been brought to my attention or to Mr. Harnack's attention to date. But I would say that in my dealings with Dillons, I can say with some comfort that they would be more than willing to discuss any code issues or any other concerns that the neighbors may have.
And if I could just ask the opponent to come back down, and if Mr. Johnson, you could just slide that picture down a little bit so we can see more of the alley, so that may help her. There you go. And would you identify yourself again? And
I'm Julie Tyndall. I live right there.
Okay.
That one right there. And it's about a 10-foot steep abandoned alleyway that is eroding. There is no sort of support besides the trees that are holding up this dirt. I'm not saying that anybody goes in and destroys this alleyway, but there are animals, there are trees that die that need to be removed, and nobody comes back in and helps this alleyway to maintain its structure. And I think it's about 17 feet 4 inches of land from Baker's building up this steep hillside that is their property. And yes, that property edge does continue on to an alleyway, which I think is about 12 feet, which was originally put there by the city. For whatever reason, it was, no roads were put in or nothing happened, but their property, which is the 17 plus feet, is completely unmaintained. It's covered with trash. We have problems with employees that work on the building. They use it as a restroom. People sleep there. I've seen drugs being used back there. And it's just an area that has been completely unmaintained and left for whatever to happen to it that happens to it.
Okay, let me ask you this. You said you did not want the alley to become private, and the attorney for the applicant has said they would agree not to do that at this time. So at least they're going to address that part of your objection, right?
Yes.
Okay, now are you with Dillon, sir?
With Bakers.
Bakers, come on up. Would you identify yourself?
Keith Harnack.
And Mr. Harnack, are you with the company out of Hutchison that manages this property?
I'm with Kroger Supermarkets out of Cincinnati. I've been with Bakers almost 39 years. I'm very familiar with this property.
Okay. And have there been complaints that you received from the neighbors about your property up into your half of the alley, about keeping it clean and tidy? And
I'm separated from that portion of it. I'm on the construction side. However, I am aware of that area, and I know it is rough up in there. They have not communicated anything to me on looking at anything up
so
there.
What can you or your attorney say with regard to the litter, weeds, debris, and sanitation issues and security issues with what's going on back there as to, going forward, the type of neighbor you're going to be in terms of cleaning up this situation?
Well, I will make contact as soon as we're done with this meeting. I'll call down to Hutchinson and let them know what's transpired from this meeting, and to see if I can get a name of who you've talked to, because I deal with them on a daily basis, and see what I can do to help.
Okay, thank you. Would you take the picture down for me for just a second? Thanks. And then is our Parks Department Director here, Mr. Bench?
He's right behind you.
Brooke Bench, Parks and Recreation.
And does your department handle weeds and litter complaints?
Yes, we do.
And what can you tell Julie about the ability of your department, if you were to, or staff could get the weeds and litter enforcement contact information about what happens if a citizen has complaints about how another property owner is either not taking care of their property or allowing weeds and litter things to accumulate?
Sure. We have a process where you could, we would send an inspector out, and they would inspect the property, and then if we needed to follow up and send letters out to make sure that the property got cleaned up, we could do that.
And then ultimately, if the property owner doesn't clean up the alley, their half of it, and the weeds and litter, whether it's on their property or their half of the alley, does the city then do it and bill the owner for that?
That is correct.
Okay. And about how long does that process take?
No, this time of year, it's usually 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Right, with all the rain that we had, it is a little slower right now.
I have done that for the past 4 years. I call in every spring, and I do have them come out, and I leave a message and say my name, my address, their address, and say this has become a problem again. Please make sure it gets cleaned up. And besides the litter and all the activity that goes on beyond there, the bigger problem is the fact that this hillside is breaking code in the way that the structure is set up. There is nothing to maintain this structure of this dirt hillside.
So are you saying it's collapsing?
Oh yeah, it's eroding. There are animals living in it that will dig holes, and then as soon as it rains, that hole will completely wash out. There is also a railroad tie wall that is in their parking lot that they've had to reconstruct. I think it's about 2 times over the past decade, because the foundation of the hillside above their parking lot has no structure to it. And as soon as a tree dies and the roots give way, so does the hillside. And everyone's houses line on top of that hillside. And
Right.
there's
what I'll
also...
do is I'll come out there and I'll look at it, and if I can have our staff person get your contact information, I'll meet with you and we'll go over that, and then I'll reach out to Mr. Johnson, and we'll involve the appropriate city departments necessary to make sure that this gets addressed. And if it's something we can help you with, we'll gladly help you. If it's a civil matter, which sometimes these things get into the civil legal system as to the obligation of one property owner to hold back or not prevent damage to the property of another owner, and that sometimes isn't within our powers, but we'll take a look at it and we'll make sure that to the extent that we can help you, we will.
And
Okay.
I really appreciate that
Okay.
because it's...
Now, if I could have the lawyer come back up. Mr. Johnson. You have to say your name again.
Mark Johnson, 11440 West Center Road.
Mr. Johnson, I would think that your client wants,
Sure.
as its customers, the
Right.
people who can literally walk there and frequent your business.
Right. Our interests are aligned.
Right.
We'd like a clean, sanitary, well-kept property.
So having heard what you heard here today, I think it would be incumbent upon you, would you not agree, that you'll communicate things to Kroger's and Baker's and whoever is necessary with regard to the property maintenance issues to get them addressed?
Yes. I'll make a call as soon as I leave here.
Okay. Thank you for your
You bet.
assistance.
Thank you.
in that. So with that, what we're here today to address is this fueling pump station. I think we brought your concerns in, and I will help you meet with them to make sure we get that handled. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope things go well for them as they hope for the same for me.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think you're on the right track, Mr. Chairman, helping them out. The question I have is, the city asked to have this land vacated, is my understanding. Is that what happened? The city requested this? Maybe you can help me
It was
out.
brought up in the general conversation as far as, like I said, prior to submittal. If we wanted to include that with this process, if you look at the department's recommendation, it says, we'll continue, Dillon's and the neighbors will continue to work with the city at the city's request to have that easement area put into private hands. I think the city would like to, my guess is the city would like to relieve itself of the maintenance issues to the extent that the private property owners can maintain them themselves.
Okay, so that's what I'm picking up on, that the city is actually asking you or who you represent to take care of that property in the future.
Currently, they're asking us to cooperate to the extent the city would ask that in the future. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. This leads me to another question, because I sit on the committee that vacates, that these come in front of, and I've been told that there are different statutes for different reasons why this land is vacated. I am a little bit surprised, because it seems like the city is asking somebody to do something for them, and I believe I've been sort of misled in the past. And I'm just trying to bring this up. If land is vacated, I think more of this should go in front of the committee so we'd have a better understanding of this, because we do have a committee that takes a look at this. And I've been told we only take a look at certain properties because of the way the statutes have been written. But I think just for my own curiosity, at times I wish we would be more involved in that. And I do appreciate the company willing to take on this task. Thank you.
Thank you. No further lights?
With the vacation?
With the vacation.
Well, no, there's no vacation in here.
There's no vacation. With no vacation.
No vacation in here.
No, just general motion to approve.
5 through 9?
Yes, 5 through 9.
Second. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Milton?
Yes.
Pauls?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
5 through 9 are passed 7-0. Next is 10 through 13 is one case. 10 is ordinance to rezone property located northwest 168th Street and West Dodge Road from mobile home residential district to development reserve district. 11 is to rezone to mixed-use development district, portions of which property lie within the flood fringe and ACI 4PL area of civic importance overlay district. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. 12 is resolution that the plat entitled West Dodge Point is hereby approved. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. And 13 is subdivision agreement is hereby approved.
Public hearings on agenda items number 10, 11, 12, and 13 are today. Proponents, please. Mr. Thielen.
Jason Thielen, E&A Consulting Group, 330 North 117th Street, here on behalf of Tribedo LLC. This is our second plat on what's used to be called Tribedo on 168th and Dodge, now called West Dodge Point. It's just another phase of that mixed-use development agreement that's been before you a whole, and we're now final platting the next phase of that. So be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearings closed.
Motion approved. Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
It passed 7-0. Next, we'll take items 14 through 17. We have an amendment on 17, so the first vote will be 14 through 16. 14 is ordinance to rezone property located northwest 192nd and Harrison Streets from Agricultural District to Development Reserve District. 15 is to rezone to R4 single-family residential district, high density. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. 16 is resolution of the plat entitled Falling Waters is hereby approved. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. And 17 is subdivision agreement with an amendment is hereby approved.
Public hearings on numbers 14, 15, 16, and 17 are today. Proponents, please. Mr. Bachman.
John Bachman, 10250 Regency Circle. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. This is the second phase of the Falling Waters subdivision. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearings closed.
Second.
Roll call.
This is on 14 through 16.
14 through 16.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Now the amendment on 17.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Milton? Pauls? Mr.
Yes.
President?
Yes.
17 is adopted as amended, 7-0. Liquor. Item number 18 is Lila Bellows Ethiopian Restaurant at 4422 Cass Street. Request permission to change the location and to change the trade name to Cleopatra's. The new location would be 6553 Ames Avenue. A is communication opposing. B is communications from Thomas Mumgard on the history of 65th and Ames location. C is communications opposing. E is documents opposing. F is petitions that were just submitted in support with 33 signatures.
Public hearing is continued on number 18 today. Proponents, please.
Christopher Peterson, 1625 Farnham Street in Omaha. I'm appearing on behalf of the applicant. I think the central issue and concern right now is the control aspect of this transaction. Essentially, we have a building that has a troubled history that's part of a troubled and challenging part of Omaha. And finally, we have an owner who has not dealt successfully with the city council. And so the risk in granting this Class I liquor license is essentially in the possibility of having this individual, this previous property owner, have some kind of control or influence over the distribution. And so I understand that concern of this council. I first want to point out that ultimately the legal control that this individual had over this property ceased when the commercial lease was signed between Lalabella's and between this property owner, granting a full possessory interest in the property. And what I mean by a full possessory interest is possession to the entire building, not just a portion of the building, not just leasing out a back office of the building or just the upper floor. He leased out the entire building for a term of 3 years, maintaining the control and right to the premises of that entire building. Again, to reinforce The lease states that Cleopatra's is leasing the premises situated in the city of Omaha, county of Douglas, state of Nebraska, described as 6553 Ames Avenue. So the entire premises. This is in contrast to, from my understanding, what has previously occurred in terms of tenants renting portions, multiple tenants renting portions of the building, perhaps portions of the building being vacant. In this situation, the entire control is actually with Cleopatra's Restaurant. Second is the rights that the property owner does have, because he does have certain rights under this commercial lease agreement. He has been granted the right to enter the premises at reasonable times and upon reasonable notice for the purpose of inspecting the same. So he has an inspection right. And second, he has the ability to make repairs to the roof, exterior walls, and structural foundations, so he has a repair right. So those are his two explicit rights to enter the premises. But certainly we can think of situations where he may be able to enter, say, if perhaps he wants to enjoy a meal at the restaurant. What would keep him from doing that? And so I understand that there could be some additional influence as far as this individual coming and influencing the distribution of the alcohol. Furthermore, is the general idea that the alcohol is being sold in this difficult and challenging part of Omaha, so the location of the restaurant. And I want to point out, if I could, the sales projection for the company. And the risk that I discussed, the risk here is this number right here, this 15%. This is the expected revenue projection that's going to be coming from the company. About 15% of it is expected to come from alcoholic sales. The rest of it, the overwhelming majority, is going to come from, as you'll see, food, catering, various events and bookings. So this 15%, although it's an important percent in terms of appealing to the customer base that they're targeting, it is still only a very small percentage of what they're expecting in terms of their revenue, which I believe mitigates a lot of this risk. Furthermore, they've demonstrated through setting up off-duty police officers to mitigate much of the risks of violence. The target consumers that they're looking at are the more older conservative adults, and furthermore, the hours of operation, because they're targeting this older, more conservative adult population in northern Omaha. Naturally, their hours of operation, I believe they posted their hours in the newspaper recently, and they're not anticipating closing currently between 8 and 10 o'clock p.m. If this license is granted, if it's permitted to be transferred, that would probably increase to about 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning, but absolutely no later, again, because of the target audience that they're trying to reach here. So what do we propose to do in terms of finding solutions to these issues? Because again, I understand that these are significant issues. And so our first suggestion is to limit the license itself to that beer and alcohol are sold on the top floor only. So limit where it's sold. That's precluding any kind of sports bar that would be offered on the basement floor. And then furthermore, as far as the control aspect, so the relationship between the restaurant and the property owner, so the tenant and the landlord. And I'm confident that there's some contractual incentives that we can create that would mitigate any risk of influence by this property owner. And so here's what I suggest. I suggest that this license is granted contingent on us signing an agreement between Cleopatra's Restaurant and the landlord, the property owner, stating first that the landlord shall not attempt to control or influence that tenant's business, including but not limited to the tenant's sale of alcoholic beverages, except insofar as his own property rights would be concerned, naturally. Second, that landlord would abide by all the rules and limitations imposed by the liquor license granted by the city. And then third, that the landlord shall not enter the premises for any reason apart from its right to inspection as granted herein. And I understand that we can contract all we want, but unless there's an actual incentive to get this done, then it may not be effective. And so what I'd also propose is a liquidated damages provision in there stating that in the event the landlord does breach any of these above provisions, and such breach results in Cleopatra's loss of its Class I liquor license, then the property owner or landlord shall pay to tenant as liquidated damages and not as a penalty the total sum of $20,000 as liquidated damages, and again as an incentive for him to keep this commitment. We've already gotten assertions from this individual that he's staying clear of this property, and I believe up until this point he's been on the property maybe once. And so I believe through additional contractual incentives, liquidated damages provision, that these issues of control can be significantly mitigated. Ultimately, the bottom line is in whose hands do we want this property? Currently, if Cleopatra's leaves the property, then possession would revert back to the property owner, and he would again have control. On the other hand, if Cleopatra stays in the property, we see some significant benefits, that this portion of Omaha is in need of. Services to the city, including wholesome entertainment, employment for a significant number of Omaha residents, and significant tax revenue. And so those are the points that I wanted to bring up. If you have any further questions about that, please let me know.
Thank you. Are there other proponents that want to speak today?
My name is Archie Godfrey. I'm president of the Nebraska Black Chamber of Commerce, and Cleopatra is a member of our organization. I would like to speak in favor of Cleopatra's gaining their liquor license, their limited liquor license, but I want to put a different twist on what was heard 4 weeks ago. Number one is that the demographics of what is going to be served there is targeted people 45 and older. The revenue source coming from the dinner sales is coming from church groups, especially on Sunday, coming from families primarily. That's his targeted market. And I think the illusion or the idea that this would be the same of the same of the same that's happened in the past is not true. One thing about the new owner of this restaurant is that he has basically he has a restaurant. He's been in service for 3.5 years, and he's expanding to this, primarily because of reasons that the owner of the other establishment does not want any kind of alcohol in that building because of religious reasons. So that's what got him to look for a site outside of that. But let me say something about the establishment he runs. If you would go to Google, there are several sites within the city that basically review and do an evaluation of restaurants throughout this city. Most of them have about 12, 25, maybe 30 responses. And most of them receive a ranking of about 78, if that would be good. This gentleman has, on 2 different sites, almost up to 107 responses of people calling in or writing in saying what they thought about their experience. Of that, his ranking is 5-star or 4.5-star. 98% of the people said that they favor the restaurant, the service, the staff, and the food. But one thing that struck out as to be noticeable that several people talked about the intentiveness of this owner. One specific example was a certain person said that his wife really didn't like spicy food. And so he gave her a sample. It was too spicy. So he went back and had it cooked with the spices out. I think that says something to him and the reputation that he's trying to set. Now, in conclusion, I would just like to say this. Omaha is a town that is known for its diversity in restaurants. Almost every nationality, almost every country is represented by a restaurant here or several restaurants. What this particular restaurant seeks to be is one of the finer restaurants that would rank in the level of steakhouses and so forth like that. But the cuisine is very specific. Soul food buffet and African cuisine. With a city that has over 60,000 African Americans and another contingency of native-born Africans. Along with that, this is a business model that is gained to survive and gained to be successful and gained to employ people. And so what we're saying is give him the opportunity to expand his business, to take his skills and go forward in this establishment. It's a beautiful establishment. And actually give him an opportunity to make this thing work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Any opponents that want to speak?
Good afternoon, Honorable President and City Council. My name is Liz Moldenhauer. I live at 2345 North 64th Street, and I am the president of the Benson Neighborhood Association. I'm here today. As we know, we've had some issues, specifically with liquor licenses at this location. And the Neighborhood Association, in dealing with a number of those issues, is here to make sure that you understand that we have some serious concerns with dealing with a new establishment, having the previous owner, Mr. Roethlisberger, have an establishment in his property. I also want to address some issues that I've just found with the testimony that we have today. The discussion was that the legal control of the property would be ceased by the property owner, and so no specific influence would be, there would be no specific influence. My concern, though, is if the property owner still has possession of the building, what soft influence is he still going to be able to have? Even if he can't, even if he's not supposed to be in the building, only under certain limited circumstances, he still is the property owner. I mean, what if one of his friends, because we know that oftentimes friends are very influential, but what if one of his friends comes into this new establishment and says, hey, I think let's try something different. Let's do some more events. One of the problems with the new event, with having events in general, is when Claiborne Center first went into this building, they specifically had events. It was a rental hall, and we had tons of problems with that. Just because it wasn't a restaurant didn't mean it didn't bring in some violence to our area. And whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a rental hall, I think the concern of violence is still present. I understand that the liquor, the total amount of liquor, the 15%, the sales amount isn't going to be very much, but it seems like liquor itself brings in the most problems. So when we look at the percentages, yes, they may not be making a whole lot, but then ultimately we're spending a whole lot on resources such as the police department when they have to, when they have overtime, when the neighborhood people themselves, especially neighborhood advocates, have to come in and, and it's kind of like babysitting. this location has become a high-maintenance area. And in the last meeting, Dr. Thompson made a point. He said, we want business in this location. We want business in this location too, but we want good business. We don't want a bad business that's going to bring in problems. Good businesses attract more good businesses, and they attract people who want to live in the area. They attract people who want to make improvements in the area as well. And so that's one of the concerns that I have. In terms of time for the restaurant, eventually there'll be 12 to 1. My question is, if it's going to be a restaurant, at least to start out with, why can't we have restaurant hours? And not only that, why do we have to have a liquor license immediately? I understand that there's a lot of work and there's a lot of cost from transferring from one property to the other, especially when you're talking about a restaurant. At the same time, has there been any discussion about maybe having a trial period where the restaurant can just be a restaurant, where they can establish themselves at the new location, and so that people can come and really enjoy it? I mean, they talked about all the people that have given great reviews. That means people are going to be there. So if that's an option to maybe have a trial period, I would love to hear about that. Something else that I wanted to talk about was that the property owner said that there would pay liquidated damages to the tenant. And my question is, what liquidated damages will the property owner give to the neighborhood if there are problems that are going to occur? Because there are a number of people that have moved out from the neighborhood due to problems in the past. We just want to make sure that we have residents that are safe and that they are able to raise their kids in peace just like everybody else does in the city. This new target, also, they talk about a new target. This is the same new target that the Claiborne Center came up with when they first approached us, when they approached you and talked about their liquor license. I have a concern about that as well, because we were told that there would be all kinds of great family activities. Well, if you have alcohol involved, that limits some of the family activities. That's just part of it. That's not to say that you can't have a safe family environment. There are plenty of festivals, there are plenty of different events that host alcohol, but if you're going to really focus on attracting more families, is this kind of the family atmosphere we want to have? So I'm asking, we've worked very hard with other organizations. We work hard to make our neighborhood better, but we do have some serious concerns in regards to giving a liquor license at this location with Mr. Roethlisberger being the property owner. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents today? Captain Rick.
Council President, council members, Shana Ray, I'm the captain of Northwest Precinct, 505 South 15th Street. I had an opportunity with Investigator Smoot from the Nebraska State Patrol to sit down and talk with the applicant. He's a very, very nice gentleman. And we did find out, that he was a nice guy, but we found a couple concerns. On his current liquor license, Lalabella, he has an affidavit that his spouse will not be involved in the business. And I'm unsure of the reason for that, but there is that current spouse. So State Patrol, he mentioned that his wife runs the business when he is not there and she cooks. So the State Patrol has filed additional paperwork regarding a violation of that spousal affidavit. Also, he presented us with a very large business plan. When we asked him about several factors on this business plan, he, like a 4 a.m. closing, some of how he got his figures financially, he was not able, he said, well, I didn't write that, I don't know what that is. So there were a lot of questions where the applicant didn't have answers to what exactly was on his business plan, which raised some concerns for us.
Thank you. Any other opponents that want to speak today? I'm going to go ahead and close public hearing and recognize, though, there's also a letter of opposition submitted by the Benson Ames Alliance, who I know has a representative here as well. So I think public hearing is closed, but I know we'll have some questions for both maybe proponents and opponents, and I know I do initially. And some comments, too. I mean, as we've noted before, Councilman Gray and I in particular tried very hard several years ago to make this location work, both with the neighborhood and with the applicant and the license holder at that time. But there were just too many incidents. I think it was 78 police calls we talked about a few weeks ago. And it sort of started off down this same road we're talking about today, which concerns me a little, in that we worked really hard to establish some what we thought were reasonable conditions on the license so that we could prevent those kind of issues from happening. And we found that if we gave an inch, we gave a mile, and those conditions didn't work out well at all for anybody. And it's been a lot better since we revoked that liquor license, and I can't put the neighborhood back through that again. I think the police agrees with us, and I think the Liquor Commission agreed with us, at least at the time. But I do have a couple questions for maybe Mr. Peterson, because there were a couple new things discussed today that we didn't discuss last time. So this notion of a liquor license to the business, you talked about that being 15% of the expected revenues. So the obvious question is, and it was raised by Ms. Moldenhauer, would you be willing to try the restaurant without the liquor license for a period of time if that isn't anticipated to be a major income source of their initial business plan?
And that's a good question. What I tried to emphasize in my discussion was that although it is a small percentage, only 15%, it's an important percentage in terms of trying to attract those individuals who just want a glass of wine or a beer while they're having their meal. Individuals that may go elsewhere, across the river to have their meal. And so, although it's not the focus of it, it is a complement to the business in terms of attracting the clientele they're looking for.
Okay. I suspect that might be the answer. So the answer for now is no, it's not something you'd be willing to do.
This is Archie again. Are you asking, the question that you're asking, is the client willing to make some sort of concessions?
Yes, and that concession would be open the restaurant without a liquor license to start with to prove that this can be done and done well.
And my explanation to this, is that it is very difficult for a restaurant to make a profit with the competition it is. And it's doubly difficult for a buffet. The biggest margin, whether you go from McDonald's that's selling pop to Anthony's that's selling wine, the drink has the largest margin of profit. And what we're saying is that not to have the limited alcohol license limit some of the individuals that would come to your restaurant as families or guests that want to go to a fine restaurant and have dinner, like taking your wife out, because she can go straight up the street to Famous Dave's, and have barbecue and alcohol. You can go straight up the streets to Applebee's and have dinner with your kids and have alcohol.
Yeah, I understand it's a competitive situation, but is the answer no then? That's what I'm trying to get at.
The answer is that we're coming here to solve a problem. The problem with the owner, I think we can legally address, and the problem with how does he operate his business. The question that I have is this: if we give him 4 months not to sell liquor, what changes if he wants to sell liquor 4 months from now?
We'd have to reapply, and we'd have to watch the track record and see how that went, I think would be the idea.
Okay. Does his 3 years of experience mean anything about the type of business that he runs?
Yeah, and I have some questions about that too, perhaps for Mr. Peterson again.
Okay.
So maybe I'll come back to that question if you'd like, because I would like an answer on that, and maybe other council members would too. And we should point out that, as you know, the City Council is only a recommending body as far as that goes. The Liquor Commission does decide that issue ultimately. But the other thing that makes me kind of uncomfortable in the application is that, so we're talking about a liquor license for a restaurant. And I have all the confidence in the world. It is a great restaurant, and I like Ethiopian food myself. I'd love to come to your place. I know it had been on Saddle Creek there for a long time, and I'm sure it is well run in that respect. But as I mentioned, we've tried really hard at this location to establish a bunch of conditions that didn't work out very well. And typically, it had been the first floor versus the basement floor has a problem. And so when the application talks about a transfer ordinance of a restaurant, my concern is not the restaurant, but all the other stuff on there, when we start talking about rental rooms and party rooms and sports bars and keno, what's that have to do with the restaurant? And that's where we got in trouble in the first time, I think. So I know you've talked about some conditions that were new today that weren't discussed last time, so let's talk some more about those things. So if you were trying to limit to the first floor, what prevents anything from going to the basement floor in terms of a liquor license?
So you're saying what prevents them from taking it to the basement and selling alcohol?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, potentially it's going to be up to their desire to adhere to the terms of that liquor license. You know,
I think that's right, and that's very
jeopardy,
difficult to enforce at times for us in the police department.
Mm-hmm. And that's true. That's understandable, because ultimately it's going to be an issue of enforcement.
Okay. And let's talk about with these special events in the basement, who's doing the booking and marketing of those under this business model?
I believe the manager of the company right now, so Miss Corla Graham, is in charge of that.
And I think part of what we experienced the first time, I don't want to belabor this too long, but part of what we experienced the first time too is that it's a large space, and when you have so many different activities planned there, the pressure becomes very great to expand those activities, and the pressure becomes great to expand alcohol to those activities, and then therefore we had some of the crowd problems we've had in the past that the police have expressed concern about, and that causes me great concern too. Anyway, I should point out, because it is a serious violation that was kind of glossed over a little bit last time, and I have no doubt he's a good operator and has good intentions, and I think he's taken steps to correct this. But even at the current location, there is the affidavit issue that's new today. I won't delve into that, but others might want to. But we did have a cell minor at that location too, which is a serious infraction of a liquor license, and I think that's something we need to take into account as well. When we talk about a leap of faith we would be taking on all these activities at this new location. I think I'll stop there and see if others have questions. I think I see another light or two here, but I guess what I would say is I would be comfortable with the restaurant being there. I'd like the restaurant to be there. I'm very uncomfortable with all the rest of these things that seem to be kind of thrown onto this transfer license, and I think probably originally intentionally so. The neighborhood opposition is important to me as well, and the police opposition is important to me as well. But I think if we could start with the restaurant, give that a chance to go, that would be a good solution to me, and I'm pleased the neighborhood has reached out to the operator and wants a restaurant to work there, and if not at this location, somewhere in the area, because that would be great too. And to the larger issue, I agree with the larger issue. I think we do need more opportunities in the area for the large majority of responsible adults that want a venue like this and treat it well and want a safe environment for their families. And I believe there is demand for that. But I think at this location under this ownership, they've proven they can't handle that responsibility, and that's my position still today. Councilman Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know that I have any questions for anyone, just maybe a few statements. And I guess the first thing I wish would have occurred was that you had looked into this building a little bit further and done a little bit more homework before you went into a lease arrangement with this individual. Because now you put the council in a position where, as much as we might like you and as much as we may agree with the president of the Black Chamber of Commerce and others, and I recognize that not only does there need to be more adult facilities, there needs to be more adult facilities for people of color. Specifically, African American people older citizens don't have a lot of places to go in the district to enjoy themselves, and I'm not unmindful of that. And I agree that that's a great need that we need to address in this community and in that area. But I wish you had done a little bit more homework in terms of the person that the situation as it existed, and I won't even talk about the person, the situation that has existed, and it's not that it has existed one time, it has existed over and over and over and over. And that's the frustration that this council feels, in particular the two of us who have been trying to work diligently to make something happen at that place. I'm willing to review the possibility of a liquor license for that place in 6 months. I'm not prepared to do it today. And we've talked about that. And I don't know that the votes are here to do that. So you may have to take your chances with the Liquor Control Commission in Lincoln. My preference would be that you do a restaurant first, and let's revisit this in about 4 to 6 months after you've operated for a while. It's just not going to, you're not going to get it today. I just don't feel like it's there. As much as I want to support it and as much as I understand the need and the necessity for having it, and having something in the community for people of color who are probably not my age, probably a little younger than me, but you know, for individuals like that, I do have that concern, but I'm not prepared today to support a liquor license. I think if you operate the restaurant for 4 to 6 months and then we review it through the law committee, of which Councilmember Pauls is the chair, and let them revisit this, I think that would be the most appropriate way to do this at this point. But I'm not supportive of it today. It has nothing to do with you or the people that surround you. Corley, you know me well enough to know that. It is about that location. It is about that place. It is about the concern that you don't own it. If you owned it, it would be a different story, but you don't own it.
And you're open already.
Yeah, and you're already open. And I think what we need to do is a strong push towards getting people there to the restaurant side, and that would, and once you demonstrate the clientele that you have, it makes it much easier to push forward with a liquor license at that point. I'd be willing to revisit it in 6 months. I'm not prepared to do it today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, and I think that the idea of waiting the 6 months to see how your business operates was an eminently fair proposal by Councilmember Festerson, and was quite pleased when I heard the Benson Neighborhood Association President Liz Moldenauer suggest the same thing. It's the history and experience at that location. You're carrying the burden of a long troubled past, and so there has to be a period which trust is built up and goodwill and a relationship with your neighbors and with the council and the community that they are comfortable with how you operate. And I think what I heard here today, and maybe some of this is just unique to my ears, but I thought I heard if you had a period of about 6 months operating as the restaurant and buffet with demonstrated hours that don't go late into the night, that you were a part of the neighborhood association, maybe attended their meetings, they got to know you, that you could then process a new business plan that shows you truly operating as an African cuisine and buffet, seeking a limited I license under conditions and an agreement that would have plenty of time to be worked out with the law department and Mr. Mumgard. He's done them before. That could then come to the committee. I think if all of that were to happen, and you can sort through the issues of the spousal affidavit and involvement and things that have happened at the current license, you'd have a much different reception. So with the type of restaurant that you have and the high rating of 4.5 stars to 5 stars that you're getting, I would think that 6 months would be a reasonable period for you to operate without the license, give you time to take a step back, join the neighborhood, work with Mr. Mumgard, the committee, demonstrate your good operation, and come back with traditional restaurant hours. It'd be something I'd be more comfortable with. So that's my suggestion. And I think the way that the neighborhood and Councilmember Festerson have suggested here today, and Councilmember Gray, that's my inclination as well.
Thank you. Is there a motion? No further lights?
Motion to deny.
Second. And let me say before we vote, too, that the restaurant is currently open, correct? Yes. So should this license fail, I'll be the first to come for lunch, and I'll bring Councilman Gray with me. And I can only pay for 3, I guess, at a time, but we'll have the council come and be happy to try your restaurant, and hope that works for you, as council members suggested.
I don't think that's an issue.
Motion to deny without prejudice, coming back in 6 months.
Second. Councilman Thompson.
Just so that you know what type of establishment that they're trying to have. Anybody that's a father on Sunday, they're giving free dinner for Father's Day.
Yeah.
That's just for the fathers, though, right? You're okay.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Thompson?
Because I do believe they are ready now, I'll say no on the denial.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Milton?
I'm going to go ahead and say no. I think they've put a lot into their business. I think they should be given the opportunity, but I'm not necessarily against the 6 months. I don't think you're going to have votes today. But I'm hoping that we will work very hard. And I'd like to see it come back in 6 months to make this a 6 months.
Pauls?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
It's denied on a 5-2 vote. Next, item 19 and 20, same applicant, same location for 2 licenses. Black Beer and Tables, 2835 South 170th Plaza, Suite 200, Class I liquor license, new application, new location, and 20 is a catering license for the same applicant, the same location.
Public hearing on items number 19 and 20 are today. Proponents, please.
Michael Leon, 7132 Pacific, with the applicant. The manager, Andrew Cannell, is also with us to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Leon.
My name is Andrew Connell, 16861 Brown Street. I'm going to be the general manager of Black Beer and Table, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Second. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton?
Yes.
Pauls? Mr. President?
Yes.
And Jerem passed second time for potential conflict of interest. It is adopted 6-0, passing. Item number 21, Kennedy's Shop, 5920 Sorensen Parkway. Package liquor license, new application, old location. That's an upgrade from a off-sale beer.
Public hearing on number 21 is today. Are there any proponents?
My name is Tabul Naib. I live at 3679 South 188th Street right now, and I'm going to be the new owner of the property. We are basically redeveloping that property. It's closed right now. We are putting everything new in the property, and we are just asking for the same license that we had. We are just upgrading to the wine and liquor also, but it's all packaged.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any of your questions you have.
Thanks. Are there any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Move the approval.
Roll call.
Thompson? Gurnett? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls? Mr. President?
Yes.
Adopted 7-0. Item number 22, Walmart number 4139 at 360 North Saddle Creek Road, package liquor license and application, new location.
Public hearing on number 22 is today. Are there any proponents?
Michael Leon, 7132 Pacific with the applicant. I'm not prepared to answer a lot of questions since I got called on this today, but I think there's been a lot of work behind this.
Okay. Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Thompson? Yes. Gurnett? Yes. Gray? Yes. Jerem? Milton? Yes. Pauls? Yes. Mr. President?
Yes.
Jerem passed second time for a potential conflict of interest. It's adopted 6-0-1 passing. Item number 23, Black Oak Grill, number 114 at 220 South 31st Avenue, Suite 3107. Is a catering liquor license application, no location. They presently hold a Class I license at that location.
Public hearing on number 23 is today. Are there any proponents?
Yep, I'm Mike Sizek, 15108 Bedford Avenue, and I am the general manager of Black Oak Grill, and we can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson? Gurnett? Yes. Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Yes. Milton? Pauls? Yes. Mr. President?
Yes.
Approved 7-0. Item number 24, Apollon, 1801 Vinton Street, request permission to appoint Howell manager. We have a request to withdraw that application.
So move to withdraw. Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls? Mr. President?
Yes.
Withdrawn 7-0. Item number 25, Cheddar's Casual Cafe, 12152 L Street, request permission to appoint Laura Daisley manager.
Public hearing on number 25 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, I'm Laura Daisley, 1207 North 95th Avenue. I'm the GM at Cheddar's. I've been there for 3 years. I'm here to answer any questions anybody might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents, please? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Thompson.
Yes, just to say that your $3.50 margaritas go over very well in the Thompson household.
Nice, good to hear. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls? Mr. President?
Yes.
Approved 7-0. Item number 26, Valentino's at 5022-24 South 108th Street, request permission to appoint Anthony Mezzanino, Jr. manager.
Public hearing on number 26 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Motion to lay over 1 week.
They're requesting if you lay over 2 weeks.
Lay over 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Motion to lay over 2 weeks. Second.
2 weeks and continue the public hearing.
Continue the public hearing.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls? Mr. President?
Yes.
2 weeks, 7-0. Item 27 is Residence Inn at 6990 Dodge Street. Request permission to appoint Blair Rifle manager. We have a late request to withdraw that one as well.
Motion to... Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls? Mr. President?
Yes.
Withdrawn 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause an item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed consent agenda shall be taken up by City Council meeting following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed unless otherwise provided by City Council rules of order.
Public hearings on agenda items number 28 through 30 were held on June 3rd.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on these items, which I also support, but I just wanted to add some remarks on number 30 because we discussed it last week, and I just want to make sure it was clear from that conversation that wasn't entirely clear last time. And number 30 was is the transfer ordinance of about $11 million into the 2015 budget, which is a very large amount than we typically see, but must go forward 2 years to the budget, and so I'm supportive of that. But we talked at the time about the cash reserve, which I think is an important topic for us to consider going forward. And this ordinance puts, I think, $250,000 into that fund So Mr. Curtis and I discussed it after the last meeting to make sure it was compliant with the ordinances the council passed in recent years, trying to build up the cash reserve, and I believe it is. Originally, there was an original ordinance that tried to build that up pretty quickly, up to $12 million, which would be the 4% under the city charter. The actual ordinance passed had some benchmarks for us to reach, which we have done so far, but also identifies the goal of getting to 12 million at some point, and also stipulates that each following year must be increased by about 4%. And I believe that $250,000 is about the 4% we've talked about, so I think that is accurate. But I'd also say that that only gets us to 2% reserve in 2015 unless we add more through the budget process or in future years. And I think that 2% isn't very much for a large organization. It's not very much for a governmental organization. When we consider the state as an example, I think they have benefited over the years from having a strong state cash reserve, much larger than 2%. And I think we could benefit from the same going forward should we continue to make progress on that, and I think we should. I think the other reason to do that, too, is that I know it is a factor in our rating agency evaluations. They mention that in their analysis each time. Certainly, the bigger factor, as Mr. Curtis pointed out last time, is our pension system. And we all know we need to make more progress there. But I'd also say the closer we can get to the 4% reserve, the better they would view that as well. So when we go through this budget process, I think we all need to keep that in mind as a goal. So with that, I know we have a motion and a second on those three items. Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Milton. Pauls.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
They're all passed 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items number 31 through 33 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. Seeing none, public hearings closed. Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Gurnett. Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Milton. Pauls.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
They're all 31 through 33 are adopted 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 70, the public hearing on agenda item number 34 shall be held on third reading. Ordinance on second reading. Item 35, ordinance to amend Section 1 of ordinance number 39693, passed June 11, 2013, because the description of the abutting lots in Section 1 are incorrect due to the fact that the Planning Department inadvertently filed replats of the blocks before the vacating ordinance was passed and recorded.
Public hearing on number 35 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 36, ordinance approving agreement for the sale of city-owned real property, authorizing an agreement with 24th Street Enterprises to sell the property at 219 South 24th Street for development of a 132-room hotel.
Public hearing on number 36 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 37, ordinance to approve the acceptance of the out-of-school time program grant from the National Recreation and Parks Association to support the City of Omaha's out-of-school program in-kind training materials for the implementation of a nutrition educational program, organ-wise guys, and a travel stipend to attend a one-day training conference.
Public hearing on number 37 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 38, ordinance approving the bid of American Courier Corporation to provide delivery services between 12 public libraries as well as other designated pickup and delivery sites throughout the City of Omaha's metropolitan area.
Public hearing on number 38 is today. Are there proponents?
Good afternoon. I'm Regina Dell with the Omaha Public Library, 215 South 15th Street, as a proponent, here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Other proponents?
I'm Ken Bartholomew. I'm with American Courier Company. I'm president of the company. I'm 6164 South 176th Street.
Thank you. Are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Ms. Milton.
Yeah, I just have one question, and I knew this answer we had discussed this a couple months ago, actually, that we decide that the libraries and the city decided to do an RFP for a courier corporation in order to save money. Do you recall how much money the city was spending when we were doing it ourselves?
I don't have that information. Our fiscal specialist worked on that with the senior managers.
Okay.
I don't have that information.
But previously, we were providing the trucks and paying for the maintenance on those trucks. Is that correct?
We were paying for the maintenance on a truck. We were paying for 2 full-time and 2 part-time drivers and the fuel cost.
Okay. And it's my understanding that the vehicles were in need of being replaced. Am I correct?
They had been advising for the past 2 years that we needed to replace those vehicles.
Okay. So although, and just from what you're telling me, 2 full-time, 2 part-time, and plus 2 new vehicles, whatever the cost of that would have been, and I've asked for that information, at least for next week when we go to vote on this, but obviously this $101,000 is significantly less than what we would have spent had we chose to continue doing it ourselves. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm asking that question. I don't think you had a heads up on that, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I'm glad, I think last time you were here, there was a human barrier to you getting to the podium, so I'm glad it was a little easier this time.
I tried to do that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next item.
Pursuant to City Council Rule 7E, agenda item number 39 shall be laid over 2 weeks for publication and public hearing. 40, Land Reutilization Commission transmits their general purpose financial statement for the year ending December 31st, 2013.
Roll call.
Thompson. Gurnett. Gray. Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
Placed on file 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 70, the public hearing agenda items 41 through 44 shall be held on the 3rd reading. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7C, the public hearing agenda item number 45 shall be held on the 2nd reading. Chairman of the Board of Equalization reports approval of the plans of assessment with adjustments and corrections made at the regular meeting held June 3rd, 2014.
Motion approved.
Roll call.
Thompson. Yes. Gurnett. Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Yes. Milton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion adjourned. Second.
Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Gurnett. Gray. Yes. Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
3:22.
Spacious skies for amber waves of grain.